As I write up this script, I'm just a couple days away from my high school graduation. It's been a really special time where I've met a lot of people, had a lot of new experiences, and grown a lot as a person. But most interesting for this video, I've watched, played, and read a lot of things. I've written bits of scripts for different videos involving a lot of my favorite things, but most of them didn't really go anywhere. To try to alleviate this, I want to make a new possible series that for now I'll be calling Talking About My Favorite Stuff, which is such a creative title, I know. The stuff I talk about will include games, TV shows, anime, manga, comics, movies, etc. I'll try to present everything in a short form format for the sake of making scripts more manageable to finish, and if something demands more time and thought out of me, maybe I'll make a bigger video on it in the future. For the first episode, I'd like to start with a game that's fresh in my head, and one that became an instant favorite for me. This game is OMORI, developed by OMOCAT and released in December of 2020. OMORI is an RPG Maker game with horror and psychological elements, which, after a very successful Kickstarter campaign, saw a brutal 6.5-year development time. OMORI is a game which I was familiar with for a while before its release, all the way back to its early phases in 2015 and 2016, while I was still in middle school. Here and there I'd see or hear something about the game and remember it briefly, for it would quickly fade from my memory. However, it once again became fresh in my mind in November 2020, when the game's final trailer debuted with a listed release date of Christmas of that same year. What initially struck me in this trailer is how different the game seemed. A lot of characters I didn't totally recognize, and a general feeling that seemed distant from both the initial 2014 trailer as well as the older OMORI story comic. The combat system seemed foreign, especially seeing as how I expected the game to have no combat at all, and the general presentation seemed way different from what I'd previously known OMORI as. But before I keep going, though, some of you might be curious as to what OMORI actually is about. I'll outline the rest of this video with a spoiler warning first, though. OMORI is a game best experienced completely blind, and I'm not going to try to spoil too much about the big overarching plot, but spoilers for the first few hours of the game will be present. You have been warned. Initially, OMORI follows, OMORI. OMORI is a young boy living in a place called Whitespace, where he's lived for as long as he can remember. Like the Whitespace he inhabits, OMORI appears monochrome. Upon entering a door in Whitespace, OMORI meets up with his friends Aubrey, a hot-headed tomboy, Kel, a hyperactive and honest kid, and Hiro, Kel's responsible older brother with an affinity for cooking. Shortly after, they meet up with Mari, who is OMORI's older sister, and Basil, a shy boy who likes flowers and photography. The six of them have a picnic, look through photos, and explore their colorful world. When they reach Basil's house, however, Basil sees a distressing photo of Mari, and OMORI is sent back to Whitespace. With no other options, OMORI stabs himself, escaping Whitespace. We cut to a boy sleeping in bed with a striking similarity to OMORI, named Sunny. He wakes up, but seems to be afraid of heights. After conquering his manifested fears in the fight, Sunny gets some food and returns to bed. We cut back to OMORI in Whitespace, and when we go back through the door, we find out that Basil's gone missing and that we need to find him. After a side quest and a search gives us no leads, OMORI is sent back to Whitespace once more, stabs himself, and we return to the perspective of Sunny. From here, Sunny wakes up, goes downstairs, and sees his friend Kel waiting for him at the door. From here, Sunny and Kel spend the day together doing this and that, and the player is shown how the town has changed while Sunny has been, as we hear, isolated in his house for several years. Friends have drifted apart, the town itself has changed, and OMORI's story becomes about finding out why it all happened. As the game's Kickstarter says, your story is already over. You just have to remember it. So, essentially, OMORI's main story is split between two intermittent segments. The dream world that OMORI occupies, and the real world that Sunny occupies. Most of the main story occurs in the real world, while the combat and dungeons are in the dream world. There are 3 major sections of each, excluding the prologue, adding up to about 20 hours of main story content total. The dream world segments make up the majority of OMORI's runtime. In these segments, you explore the world searching with your friends for Basil, and gradually seeing more and more of what's been going on in the real world as well as in Sunny's psyche. These segments have a heavy emphasis on combat, and are where you'll be obtaining new items, learning new skills, and leveling up the 4 main characters in your search for Basil. A lot of the content in this section isn't as important for the main plot, but some of it provides solid background context and interesting details for players with a keen eye. The real-world segments are the meat of the game plot-wise. Most encounters here are heavily scripted, and those that aren't are not mandatory. In these segments, you begin to piece together what's been going on with everyone in the past few years. what's changed, and the truth behind what caused these events in the first place. As the story goes on, the lines between the dream world and the real world begin to blur, and the choice becomes which you choose to accept. Moving away from the story for a bit, OMORI's main gameplay is carried by the combat encounters, as you'd expect from a lot of RPG Maker games. Combat is turn-based, with all actions being decided at the beginning of the round and executed in order of each character's speed. OMORI's main gimmick is the emotion system, which acts as a combination of traditional status effects or buffs, as well as being the game's rock-paper-scissors type mechanic. The four main emotions, neutral, happy, angry, and sad, all have their own different effects, strengths, and weaknesses. The basic gist is that neutral is, well, neutral. Happy beats angry, angry beats sad, sad beats happy. However, each of the emotions have their own effects as well. Happy increases speed and crit rate but lowers hit rate, angry increases damage but lowers defense, sad increases defense but lowers speed and splits some damage taken to your juice, OMORI's SP or MP replacement, instead of your main health. OMORI's battle system is far from groundbreaking, but it's more than a lot of RPG Maker games offer, and the presentation for each battle is very nice. One of OMORI's greatest strengths is that, due to good balancing and the simplicity of combat, the game's main story requires no grinding whatsoever. So long as you go through with most encounters you run into, you should be at an optimal level at all points of the game. And at worst, you'll always scrape by one way or another. The game level caps at 50, but you'll usually be around level 30 by the end of the main story in the dream world. However, for those interested, there's plenty of optional grinding and harder combat in the game's alternate story path. Let's briefly talk about that alternate story path. This will be spoilers for that section of the game, obviously. On the first day in the real world, Kel will knock at your door, but you have the option to decline his knocking and go back to bed. This decision will put you in the game's Hikikomori route, or just OMORI route. In this route, all the daytime segments just involve doing your daily chores and then going back to sleep to enter the dream world. After what would normally be the final boss in the dream world, the player can return there, at which point it will majorly expand. The player can explore this extended postgame as much as they like before reaching the two ending variants available in this path. This is where the meat of OMORI's combat lies, and while I won't spoil any details here, there's also some expanded psychological elements and more lore to uncover in this route. If you found yourself really enjoying the dream world and combat sections of OMORI, or want to get the full experience and story, I highly recommend playing through this route after the main Sunny route. The main downside is that until the dream world expands the postgame, most of it is nearly identical to the main story. That's about 15 hours of repeated content, which, while worth it for some, might be a bit much for others. If you're one of those people, maybe use the OMORI route as your opportunity to replay the game later down the line. Overall, I was honestly incredibly surprised by OMORI. A game which I'd hyped up when younger and became neutral on in the years and weeks leading up to release ended up being an absolute treat that quickly became one of my favorite games of all time. I've just about exhausted what I can say about OMORI in a short format, but I'll likely pump out another video in the future looking further into my thoughts on the story and what it means to me personally. But for a quick sum up of that, playing OMORI while very close to entering my next major phase of life, and after I'd experienced my own friends drifting away for less than ideal reasons, OMORI's themes hit like a truck for me. If this video made you interested in OMORI, I implore you to check it out for yourself. I've linked the game's Steam page in the description. It's just $20 and that's hours and hours of very entertaining combat for fans of RPGs, especially those made in RPG Maker. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a good one. See ya.